my view.
Here we go. So, welcome everybody to this another conversation in the series of Living Well Now. Today we're absolutely delighted to welcome Franny Armstrong, who is the genius behind Spanner Films. We're great fans of your work, Franny, and really appreciate you taking the time to come along today. Could I ask that the rest of you keep yourself muted, not you, Franny, when you're not speaking, and there will be a chance later to ask questions. So we're just going to have a quick informal chat first with Franny. I've got like 2 questions, and Franny, feel free to kind of bring in things that you're especially interested in at the moment, what feels current to you, what feels live to you. As most of you know, Heart Community Group is focused on local community resilience in the face of the various climate and other connected predicaments that we face. We run various events and webinars. We also do lots of psycho-spiritual support for people one-on-one and in groups. And we also engage with local authorities and councils and try and have them treat adaptation and deep adaptation and transformative adaptation with more of a sense of priority and urgency than perhaps they currently are. So that's us. So welcome, Franny. And how are you today?
I am okay. My partner's got COVID, so he's isolating downstairs and I'm running everything on my own. He's like doing nothing except being ill. So that's where I'm at. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay. He's not too bad. No, he's not too bad, but he's just, out of action. Although he's working from downstairs, I can hear him night and day. He's trying to make a film for you.
Perhaps we could start by you just sharing a bit of your journey. I think most people probably are familiar with you through your films and documentaries, but just can you say a bit about your how you got here and how it all kind of unfolded?
It probably started with wanting to be a farmer when I was a small child and bugging my parents, and eventually being my mum took us on holiday. She booked a cottage next to a farm, and then I went and made friends with the farmer thinking I was going to become a farmer, and spent a week shoveling slurry and all this kind of thing. And the farmer was lovely. He really took me under his wing. I was only little, and then I had a favorite cow. It was a dairy farm, and I had a favorite cow who for some reason was called Piggy. I don't know why that was. That's what I called her. Anyway, Piggy slipped, and she got a cut on her udder. Honestly, it was about that long. And so I said to the farmer, what's going to happen with Piggy? Is the vet going to come? And the farmer said, well, she was going to slaughter in, January anyway. So I'm just going to send her to slaughter now rather than pay the £37. And I remember it was £37, which was a lot. This was about 1980. So I'm just going to send her to slaughter now. And that was the moment that all fell from my eyes. And I realized that humans just basically use animals as commodities. They're just units of production. There's no... and that was the end of me wanting to be a farmer. It was also the start of, then I went vegetarian sort of on the spot, and later went vegan, and basically have been an environmentalist since that moment, ever since. That's how it all began.
Oh, amazing. And when did you start making films?
Well, my dad is a filmmaker, and I didn't particularly want to make films. Which is weird now looking back, because I did used to make little films with him. He used to encourage me a lot. And, I've got a whole host of little films I made as a child, but I didn't have aspirations to be a filmmaker. But then, and I was a drummer in a pop group. And
were you?
Yeah, I was, yeah. And I was having a good time. We were going on tour and making records and things like that. And it was all fun. But then I heard about the McDonald's libel trial starting up which was just starting in London. And it was very well known in, the circles I was in. And I just thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. These two people who dare to stand up to McDonald's, and it brought together all the things I was already interested in, like, you know, animals, environmental stuff, workers' rights, advertising, free speech. You know, it just was one story that encapsulated everything. So I think my dad, I can't remember if I think my dad may have suggested it. Anyway, somebody suggested, so I said to my dad, you know, can I just borrow your camera equipment and make a film about these? It wasn't going to be a big film. It was just going to be a little video, you know, about these people who were doing such a cool thing. And then it just basically rolled from there. And I spent 10 years following Helen and Dave, the McLibel defendants. And eventually the film I made, you know, was on BBC Two, and it was in cinemas all around the world and on telly in more than 20 countries. And it was a huge success. And well, it was a big success, but also it between the film and the website Merck Spotlight that other people made and the trial itself, it really, really changed the world. You know, McDonald's closed in lots of countries. They closed hundreds of stores. They rebranded themselves. Well, not just rebranded, but they genuinely, you know, started using organic milk and various things. And I'm not saying that's good. And I would never eat in McDonald's, but it's certainly interesting.
Yeah.
You know, all of these things came from that, like Fast Food Nation, that book by Eric Schlosser, and Jamie's School Dinners, and just this whole way of looking at junk food was completely changed by these two people who dared to stand up to McDonald's. So from that point on, I was hooked on filmmaking, really. And I was hooked on, I mean, it's very challenging in itself, so it's great for the brain in general, and it's fantastically creative, but at the same time I realized you can change the world with films. So then I was hooked.
No, that's right. I mean, I often think with our small community group, you know, we do impact people, and we have had some small wins, but it's nothing like at scale, you know, and it must be really rewarding to make a film. And
it was amazing. I mean, you know, the film was telling the story of what the other people were doing, so, you know, but the film definitely contributed, it's no doubt about it. And it took it to a much wider audience than it currently was. But yeah, it did. I remember the feeling. It was really thrilling when things would change, you know, when a new law came in saying you couldn't advertise junk food to children, I think before 9 p.m. It was like, God, you know, that was us. And there was honestly, it wasn't many people. It was the two people fighting the case, and they had a few supporters. There was a couple of people making the website. There was a couple of us making our film, you know, so it wasn't that many. It was under 15.
Yeah.
Probably under 10 were the key people. And, you know, we really, really changed things. So it was fantastic. Yeah,
fantastic. And then more recently, of course, you've teamed up with Tom, better known as Jonathan Pye. Done a couple of things with him, haven't you?
Yes, Tom Walker. Yeah. That's very interesting to me because personally, I don't know how any of you feel. I don't want to watch any more documentaries where everything's dire. And I mean, the one that ended documentaries for me was Seaspiracy. Did any of you see Seaspiracy? I just thought it was so bleak. As like, we are destroying this, we humans, we are destroying this, and then go here, we're also destroying that, go there, yep, we've completely destroyed this, now we're going to go to this other part, you know, we're doing horrendous things to these creatures, we're doing this. And it's just soul destroying just to be human, basically, watching things like that. So I'm sort of done with watching them, those kind of films. And so that's why, I did these two comedies to see whether I could, you know, could reach people in a different way. And actually, I think it's been very successful. I'm trying to get them, not with Jonathan Pye, but with somebody else, trying to do comedies on telly, because, you know, we've just got to reach more people. And I think I'm sure you've all seen Don't Look Up, which is fantastic, but that's very much in the same spirit as my Jonathan Pye thing.
Yes,
very much the same. And so I'm hoping that I can take that idea, the similar idea, and get a TV series off the ground, but I haven't managed it yet.
Oh wow! Oh well, good luck with that.
You. Yeah.
So without wanting to, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that I think comedies can reach not just a different group of people who would never dream of watching a documentary. But also they reach people in a different way because, well, there's research done on this, that when you're laughing, it allows your brain to take on ideas that that we're blocked at taking on new ideas, or ideas that go against our, what the framework we've built for our lives. But the very act of laughing apparently allows people to let in other ideas and, potentially see things in a different way. So I think it's very exciting. Yes. And I'm off the big heavy documentaries.
Yeah. So without wanting to take the conversation in a more bleak direction, like, where do you think we are at? Because
oh my God.
Us at Heart Community Group very firmly in a kind of what I call collapse aware place. And that just,
on that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, George Monbiot, who I've been working with on river pollution, and also he and I trying to get another project off the ground, which I could tell you about. I really love it. Shall I tell you about that one?
Yeah, please.
I really like this. Basically, it's a film that's a polemic, meaning it's one person's point of view. It's not like balance this, that, and the other. It's just, this is what I think. And it's basically George saying everything we've done to try and tackle climate change is wrong so far. The whole idea that we can gradually go from the fossil fuel era gently over 50 years, that's wrong. And all you have to do is look at our global emissions to see that we've achieved nothing.
Yeah.
And actually what we need to do is an emergency switch from the fossil fuel we're going to say in 3 years. And then basically he will just lay out his vision for how we could get from where we are now in 3 years, which is, I mean, I just think I'd love to make that. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're doing at the moment, is basically trying to get the funding for that, because again, from Channel 4 or Netflix or something, but because again, we could raise the money, as I have done in the past, to make a film like that. But I feel now that we just need to get these things on the mainstream telly, and we need to get the mainstream people watching it. It's funny because I've said that idea. I mean, I live in rural Devon, and in an area that votes Tory, and there's a lot of hunting and shooting around here and stuff. But I've said it just to my to neighbors and people like that. I've said that idea, like, and everybody goes, yep, we need to get off fossil fuels now. It's weird. I thought it was a much more radical concept, but it clearly is a radical concept. But I think everybody, not everybody, but there's a mood. I think the mood could go. Obviously, the Tories are not going to do it, but
no. Well, I'm reading some of George's pieces, where he talks about how we've done that before, haven't we? In world wars and things.
Exactly, and in coronavirus.
Yes, absolutely.
And when you list what we all did during the virus, like we stopped going to, we all know what we did. We were basically in house arrest, and we all did it. And the changes that we need to make to go to the fossil fuel era, to end the fossil fuel era, and nothing like that. We don't all have to go in house arrest. We don't have to never go on holiday. We don't have to give up all socializing. You know what I mean? If that was 100%, what we've got to do to go to zero fossil fuels is like, say, 10% or 20%. So it's perfectly doable.
Well, I really look forward to that, and fingers crossed. Yeah. So I'm just going to ask one more question, then I'm going to open it up. So the rest of you on the call start to think about questions you might want to ask Franny. What can you share with us? I mean, this interview series is called Living Well Now. So given what we all know, and what we're awake to, and what can you share? What insights have you had about? You've already talked about the humour thing, but what can you share about what does it take to live well now, knowing what we know?
Well, what I found speaking for myself is to make sure you're doing practical things, which are addressing the problem, as well as doing cerebral or protesting or writing or making films or whatever you do. As well as that, get out there. I mean, what I do is I'm part of this thing called the Tiverton Tree Team just near me. And like for example, tomorrow and last weekend, we are out, we're restoring an ancient woodland near us. And so we're out there with volunteers and in the mud, physically, planting trees, protecting areas, digging ponds, physically helping nature restore itself, and you just feel so much better at the end of the day. And you drive around, and you just see all the trees that other people are cutting down, and like all the awful things that are going on, and the river pollution. I live on the river, and you just see all this soil being washed into the river. You see it all around you every day, which is so soul destroying. But then at the weekend, we're out there with a big group of kids and volunteers and everybody, and we're doing something. We're flying in the face of it. It's a drop in the ocean, but at least you feel like you're doing something.
Yeah.
Physical. Restoring whatever habitats around you that can be restored, whatever you can do. That's what I would say in terms of managing to carry on day by day. Just get out there and physically do something.
Fantastic, good advice. Okay, so put your hand up if you have a question for Franny, and if you don't want to ask it yourself, or by all means feel free to type it in the chat box. But who would like to ask something? What are you curious about? Yeah, Joanna, and then John.
It was not quite a question, but it was just an observation listening to Franny talk about humour. Because as most people know, I come at the climate crisis through finance as a financial advisor. And I follow Richard Curtis on his, make my money matter. And I was just reading up about him the other day about why he's created that, obviously coming from comic relief. And he said he wants to apply exactly the same idea, if you like, to people's finances, i.e. bringing humour into it. And the little advertisements that he keeps bringing out and sort of appear on LinkedIn and things are always with a little bit of humour. So obviously he's decided, like you, that that's a good way to get the message across. And I'm actually trying to think now that in my conversations, I'm doing workshops and things to help people with their finances, about whether I can somehow, because money is so formal and serious for most people, how I can bring that approach into my message. So I suppose my question could be, have you got any ideas?
Well, it sounds like you should nick ideas from what Richard Curtis is doing. I know Richard, he and I have worked together before, and he's obviously fantastic. And he's contributed a huge amount, massive amount. But it's interesting what you're saying about finances, and perhaps you and I could have a chat afterwards, because one thing that we are trying to do at the moment is there's a small group of us in Mid Devon where I live. We got together and we bought a 90-acre woodland near us, and we're restoring it, and we're going to be looking after it for forever. And what was interesting is it was so easy to find people who wanted to put their money into woodlands. Basically, I just put a few messages on Facebook and stuff, and there were so many people getting in touch, and we were like, okay, this is interesting. And so now we're developing a model, and this is where you might want to get involved. Basically, we're creating a model, and we've got a grant to do it, to see whether we could make something replicable where other people could put money in, and then we could buy up woodlands, look after them, restore them, protect them forever, and then buy more and more and more and more, and be a place that people could put their finances in. And we looked at Richard's model and other models, just to make sure that nobody else was already doing what we thought of, and nobody is that we can see. And so we've teamed up with the Woodland Trust, and hopefully, it's not confirmed, but hopefully they're going to be working on it with us, and we'll be launching that in a couple of months. So it's not actually public information, that. So.
Oh, well, I'd love to talk to you about that, because interesting, my next door neighbour, a huge house just near us, is being sold, and it's got some ancient woodland. And at the moment, it's likely that it will be sold with the house, if the house does ever get sold. And next door, who are actually part of the family, really want see if they can find a way of buying that. And yeah, so I think
Definitely. How big is it? What sort of size?
God, I don't know.
Is it something you can walk through in 10 minutes, or is it?
Yes. It's not huge.
It's quite small, right? Worth saving. Anybody who can get it, because you never know what people are going to do. Random people buy these things. The next thing you know, they're chopped down.
Good, thank you for that.
Let's talk afterwards.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joanna. John.
Maybe I'll mute myself. Okay, so I love your enthusiasm, Fran. And are you always like that? Or do you ever feel really set back, you know, kind of, and because I find one day my head is full of imagination-y, wonderful ideas, and things that I actually start to do. And then the next day something comes along and it's like, oh God, oh no. And they're not even big things, but if there's 2 or 3 of them in a row, you think it's not worth it. So that was my question. Thank you.
Well, I mean, you know, it's obviously everything's going against us, and you know, looks as though society is collapsing, and you know, the biosphere is collapsing, and it's unlikely that humanity will be, or any other species will be able to live on this planet going forwards, you know. So it's very hard to take that in. Obviously, I don't know. I am generally upbeat, yeah, and at the same time, we are losing, and it looks like, you know, I've got an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old, and it looks as though they will be the last generation of humans, and they themselves and I myself may well see the collapse of society and the end of life on Earth. So, yeah, but I mean, I always think that, like, I don't know if you've read the brilliant book, Don't Even Think About It by George Marshall, which is really, really good. It's the psychology of how humans don't face the truth, basically. It's similar to Don't Look Up as well. And, you know, and it's similar to how doctors can smoke, knowing what they know. But isn't it all about the fact that we have to deny our own deaths in order to, I mean, we've evolved to deny our own deaths in order to go about life, because if we truly accepted the fact that we're all going to die and it's all pointless, then we wouldn't do anything, would we? So, yeah, I don't know how I get my optimism, but I'm lucky to be optimistic. Actually, I think the reason I can be optimistic and I remain optimistic is because I do work every day. That is the work I do, is trying to head off the apocalypse, you know, and I think people who do work on that, my personal experience is the people who work full-time on climate change in any part of it, whether they're scientists or activists or filmmakers or anything, the people who have turned and faced the reality of what we're facing and are trying their hardest and working all day, every day on it, are happier than those who are pretending it's not happening, or those who are doing pointless jobs, or worse, those who are doing jobs that are exacerbating the problem. And they are unhappier than those, even though that's counterintuitive, isn't it? Because you'd think that those people like us who are facing it would find that more difficult psychologically, but in my experience, it's easier. Have we got any psychologists amongst us?
Yeah, we've got a couple.
Is there truth in that?
Yes, I mean, certainly our own experience has been that there is a journey with this, and so the automatic reaction is to stay in denial and numb and distract yourself and so on, for the reasons that you talked about. But actually, there is a pathway through that. So we often talk about, you know, there's denial and then there's doom, which is horrible, but there is something called post-doom, which even includes, Franny, the complete acceptance and embracing of our own mortality.
Individually, you mean your own individual mortality?
Yes, and everybody else's, and everybody else. But it's a journey. I don't think people get there immediately.
No.
But you seem to have to go through the doom. You know, you seem to have to go through that doorway. You can't skip that.
Right.
So there is a place for for feeling your grief and so on. But I think fundamentally it's it's a healthy thing. So the work that I do, for example, is running workshops and retreats which support people in standing tall and facing it all, and, as you say, helping people to find their own unique particular thread in it all. What is theirs to do?
Yeah.
And I think that's very empowering. Excellent, thank you. Davina, you've had your hand up for a while.
One of the few books I read that was positive in a very strange way was Ministry for the Future. Have you read it, Franny?
I have it just over there, just out of shot. And I haven't read it. How was it for you?
Well, I mean, it starts with a catastrophe that wipes out 20 million people in a week. And that sets the ball rolling for governments taking action. And it is an interesting view of the future. The sad thing is that those of us who live in the country have to move into cities so that a half of the world can be rewilded, which is a lovely image. But what he does in this book, which is written by a science fiction writer, there is no real science fiction in it. And he actually goes through every country saying what they are doing positively, there's some really good steps in there. There's some nasty things as well in that, yeah. Oh, I thought you might have read it and got a view on it.
No, my only view is that I need to get around to reading it.
Yes, do. And I have, you got, The Age of Stupid got a mention in my journey to being activism and my efforts at poetry too.
Where did you see it?
When did I see it? 2008. Yeah.
At the cinema, when it came out at the cinema?
No, Friends of the Earth in St Albans ran it, and then I ran it in the local village. And
Brilliant.
yeah, no, and I met the guy who's the wind turbine man. I met him at a NLP course because he wanted to be more dynamic in getting his point of view across.
What, Piers, who's in the film?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, cool.
Okay, thank you, Davina.
Should I pick up on? I just pick up on something we were saying earlier about, we were saying about McDonald's and how that changed things. Last year, I did this film Rivercide about river pollution with George Monbiot, and that was a live documentary, and that was inspired by what I was saying earlier about just being sick of the doom documentaries. And as well as comedy, had this idea to try a live documentary as something, another different way. I don't know if any of you watched it live, but those who did said that it worked in the way we hoped it would, which was because it was live and people knew it was live, would give a sort of sense of jeopardy that you were there on this journey with George, and who knows whether it was going to work technologically, or he went on this kayak and he was trying to get to so and so, and people said it did have this sense of jeopardy and did make them want to watch it and make them want to continue watching in a way that, if it was an edited film, perhaps it wouldn't have. Anyway, so that was really good. It was good in terms of the format, but also very, very successful in terms of taking what was then an orphan issue, as George calls it, one that nobody seemed to care about, and taking it. And now, as I'm sure you're aware, river pollution is massive. It's absolutely massive. It's in Parliament all the time. There's a new, a big thorough investigation now going on about the complete outrage that is the situation. So that was a very interesting for me that, it went very quickly from a good idea, the live documentary, to getting George on board and raising £70,000 relatively easily. and then doing the live thing. And now, in a way, I'm not even involved in it anymore, because it's just gone off. It's gone off on its own, which is fantastic. I mean, that is, after McDonald's, that's certainly one of the biggest successes of my life, in terms of, taking an idea, a problem, river pollution, and getting it out far, far, far.
Yeah.
That was a big
Brilliant.
success.
Fantastic.
I was very pleased with that.
Great. Paul, you looked like you were going to ask something. You need to unmute yourself. No. Still can't hear you, Paul. Perhaps type it in the chat if we... Oh, what a shame.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, great.
Fun, it was my computer. Just quickly, Franny, I live on Dartmoor, obviously not very far from you. You're in Tiverton, which is where I went to school.
Oh, where did you go? Sydney High?
Blundell School. Right. Dear God. Yes, and interestingly here, we're dependent on oil for our heating. And I've now managed to get us onto air source heat pump, which I'm thrilled about because it gets rid of the oil.
Well done.
And I had got rid of a car and gone onto an electric bike, but we live on such hilly country. I had to go back to having a car because we're so isolated. The thing I wanted to talk about was I live on a farm, which is where the Woodland Trust started. Yes, Kenneth Watkins. I knew him very well as a boy and did a lot of going out and watching badgers with him. And we're about to plant a huge number of trees this coming November, based on the Woodland Trust. So that's all very good. I spent the last 2 years writing a book called Tipping Point, and in it was very conscious of the fact that we were doom and gloom, and we needed to change the picture. We needed to look at the positive. And in it, there's a group that starts with grassroots sustainable projects. And I'd be very interested to talk to you at some point about the whole raison d'etre behind the book, because everything you've been saying is exactly what I've been thinking, but not achieving outwardly anyway. So that's all I wanted to say. If it was possible.
What's the book about? What kind of tipping point?
Tipping Point. It's a novel about a journalist who investigates fracking starts in America and comes over to England, and the terrible things that those companies are doing, that completely sort of irresponsible in terms of the environment, and he is threatened. His life is threatened by the company. But he works for Tipping. He goes all over the world looking at various disasters and writing about them because he wants people to be aware. I mean, I started this novel really in 2019, and then things were just beginning to really come into focus. Now, everybody knows about the environmental crisis, so we have to move on to the positive. And that's what he does. Towards the end, he moves on to the positive, but it causes his death because he's hunted down by unscrupulous people. So that's what the novel's about.
Have you got a publisher?
No, I haven't yet. I'm just finishing a 6-part radio episodes of it. Because I thought that maybe I'd have a better chance of getting that published. I've sent it out to a lot of people, and the usual thing. Yeah. Very interesting, but not for us.
It's hard.
It's a tough world.
It is.
It's a matter of finding the right person.
That's right.
They're there somewhere.
Yep.
Yes.
Good luck with it. Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Franny.
Who else? Yes, Kate.
There I am. Really great to hear from you, Franny. Loving what you're saying. Going back to kind of the living well now message and the collapse aware kind of theme. Are you aware of the deep adaptation movement, the paper in Jem Bendell? I think when I read that back in, right when it came out in 2019, was it? I think
18.
I probably read it in early 2019. That message at the end, and again, I think this came out in Don't Look Up, about just this loving response to it. If there's nothing else, then we've got to just be kind and courageous and wise and just love each other. I just wonder if that has impacted you at all, and if that might work, works its way into what you do.
I do really like that idea. I was doing a debate thingy with Peter Kalmus. Do you know him?
Yeah, love him.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And he said something. He said he's really looking forward to the moment at which the world does switch. And he thinks there will be a moment. And he said the feeling that we're all going to have when we do switch, and when we do take the whole world with us, and we do, turn that corner towards survival, basically. He said that feeling is what he is looking forward to. And he thinks it will be a feeling unlike any other that any of us have ever experienced, basically, because we've all been under this, stress and despair at different levels, really, all our lives. I've never not been worried about all this. So anyway, I just really like that thought of looking forward to that moment, looking forward to the feeling. And Rob Hopkins of Transition Towns, he also says something similar, which I really like, which is all of us lot working in this, we need to create a longing for the future, a longing for that future, which would just be so much better than where we are now. And if we can help create that in other people, then that's something that will move people forwards, because going towards something that you're longing for. I really like that idea as well. Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, just leaving some space for people to come in if they want to. Davina, have you still got your hand up, or are you just not?
No.
Okay.
When we had the first lockdowns, there was an XR idea to go out and publicise about Build Back Better, what we could do differently. And so I did that every Sunday. I had a different billboard and stood in the village. And I got loads of likes, 60 odd likes about, we don't, go holiday locally, green rather than greed, all these sort of things, trees not trident. Got loads and loads of likes on Facebook. The moment lockdown lifted, everyone wants, the airport's expanding, goody, we can go on holiday. I want to scream, and I don't know how you get these people who understand what it is, that nice, quiet, the peaceful life and community, and that we're all helping each other, and yet instantly want to go back shopping. Don't get it.
Is it the same people, though, I wonder? Are those 60 people who liked your posts, are they the same ones who are saying, yippee, the airports are expanding? I would imagine they're not.
Well, I couldn't get those 60 people to come along and have a discussion about what we could do differently. About 12 came along and wanted to do what we've been doing all along, recycling and planting some wildflowers. But that they didn't want to do anything bigger than that, like give up the car or even have a car share in the village.
Yeah.
It's hard to change people's lifestyles.
It is, but then look what happened with, like you say, with the virus. When we had to stay in and be in lockdown, then we all did it, didn't we? So, I mean, I think it needs both the very top level, the government, as George will be laying out in this film, renationalizing all the not renationalizing, nationalizing all the fossil fuel companies, ending all exploration, putting 30% less fossil fuels into the market in 1 year. You know, we need that at that level happening, and then I think it will be easier for all of us at our level to be going to your 60 people and saying, right, well, there's 30% less fuel, you know, so now is the moment that we have to have ditch our cars and have, like you say, one car share between 10, or free electric bikes for everybody, or free public transport, you know. But yeah, there's a lot of people who won't move until those big moves happen. But I do think that, again, Rob Hopkins, I'm a big fan of Rob Hopkins. He has this very nice image of pushing the rock up the hill, and he said it's a cartoon, and Rob said that he's always wondering at what point, you know, we're obviously still pushing the rock up the hill at the moment, but at some point we'll be at the top of the hill, and at some other point that rock will just start falling down the hill. And you know, we're not quite there, but I think at the moment when we are there, then suddenly it will just all of these things will happen at the same time, you know. Where at the moment everything we try and do is such hard work, as you say.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we're at that point where we just have to keep pushing and keep doing everything we can.
And I think, Chantal, thank you. I'll bring you in a moment with your question. But it was interesting last week, the IPCC report, which really was all about, for the first time, it was all about adaptation rather than mitigation and resilience. And they're now saying, we all know how cautious, you know, the reports are as a kind of, because they have to go through, you know, consensus processes. But it was the first time I'd heard them say anything like this. They said a climate resilient, sustainable world involves fundamental changes to how society functions, including changes to underlying values, worldviews, ideologies, social structures, political and economic systems, and power relationships. And I think, you know, I love your optimism, and I love Rob, and I love, you know, all of those things. But I think it's for me, it depends on what you think the primary challenge is. And if you think it's fossil fuels, which of course is a tremendous problem, and we should stop them as soon as possible. But for me, that's you know, emissions are a symptom of something much deeper, which is overshoot, which is ecological overshoot in all its forms. So, you know, as we're always saying on our webinars, even if we stopped all emissions tomorrow morning, we're still in a huge amount of trouble. And that's why, for us, the important thing is resilience and adaptation, as well as mitigation, not stopping that, but, you know, as well as, yeah. I don't know if you have a comment on that, Franny, and then I'll bring Chantal in.
Well, my only comment is it's good that, you know, different people are working on different parts of it, because they all need to be worked on together. I mean, George and I are really thinking now the most useful thing we can do is push forward this idea that we must get out of the fossil fuel era now. And then others are working on adaptation. That's great.
Yeah.
Because it's all everything at the same time is needed, obviously. There's one question I wanted to ask you lot, if that's all right, which is while I've been trying to get this film off the ground with George, a lot of people say, like telly people who are a breed of their own, basically they don't want films fronted by a white middle-aged middle-class man, because that is you know, diversity and inclusivity and everything, that is, you know, not the way it's going. But, you know, I feel that George is the person who's for 35 years has been you know, one of the key people who brought all these ideas consistently into the public arena and public consciousness. And so that's the person you want explaining this massively, you know, radical, brings the weight of knowledge and experience with him, rather than some young person who hasn't got that experience. But anyway, I was just wondering what anybody's feelings, anybody's got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd vote for George, and maybe bring in a couple of other people as well. Madela, was it on that point you wanted to? Yeah, okay, come in.
I just want to say, I just think George Monbiot, he walks the talk, doesn't he? He gets himself arrested. He bursts into tears on live television. You know, he's real. So I think he is certainly an important part.
So you wouldn't not watch it because it was presented by a middle-aged white man?
No, maybe that's because I'm a middle-aged white woman.
Yeah, thank you. Chantal.
Well, I mean, just to comment on that first, that we don't question whether David Attenborough should, present films because he's middle-aged and white. We just know that he's passionate, brilliant, and articulate, and cares. And I think that the feeling and the passion and the insight and the knowledge is what really transmutes and transmits. So yeah, that's my comment on that. I can't see Franny. I can only see you, Kim. Hang on, what's happened?
Let's change your.
Can you pin her? So it might just be. Not that I mind looking at you, but I can't see anything else for some reason.
Have you tried putting it on gallery?
Yeah. Okay. It's just weird. Before I could see Franny, but I can't see her now. It must just be something to do with I don't know what it is. Okay, that's fine. I had a question for you, Franny, which is, obviously you talked about working, it's really about your projects and what's next. So I heard you talk about working with George, and I love your vision of bringing more lightheartedness and sort of a comedic sense into. I think it's very powerful. There's lots of ways to communicate messages, and we can talk about things that are very, very serious and important in a very light-hearted, way. And sometimes that is the way to bypass people's kind of critical thinking. And I think that's really powerful. I'm just curious about whether you've got anything else in the pipeline, whether you've, Don't Look Up, anything like that. Have you got any plans maybe for something like that, or
well, I've got my sitcom that I'm trying to make, which is very similar to Don't Look Up, actually, perhaps too similar now. I mean, so it's sort of based in the media, and I don't know if you've seen the films I did with Jonathan Pye about climate change. So there's that, but that's too much money to be able to make it independently, so I need to get a TV company for that, a broadcaster. And then I've got the one with George, which is a single film proposing the end of the oil era.
That's not funny though, right?
Right. Well, anything I do has got humor in it. I've never made a film that hasn't got any laughs in it.
Yeah.
That's just my sensibility. I think everybody thinks that I'm very muesli eating, yogurt knitting and all that, but I'm so not.
Thinking more about George than you, actually, because whenever I've listened to him, he's always been pretty full on serious.
That's true, but he's not like that. It's true. Have you seen Riverside?
No.
You should watch that because it's live, and he's more him, his off-screen self, which is a little bit funnier. He's funny and relaxed and laughing at himself, self-deprecating and stuff like that. Yeah, it's true. It's not a laugh a minute, the George one. And I've got a couple of other ideas that are not yet public. So yeah, one of these will happen soon, I hope.
That's exciting. Yeah. Good luck.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll support you. We'll be your.
Thank you. Are you all on my mailing list? If you put your emails into this chat here, I can add you to our mailing list, and then you'll hear everything we're doing. That's the way I keep in touch.
Great, thank you, Chantal. Joanna, did you have your hand up again? And then Kate.
It's slightly going backwards with the conversation, but it was something that I can't remember his name said at the last Heart meeting. I think, could it have been Jeff? Somebody. But he said one thing about how people, in order to face up to this, those that haven't already, they've got to go through a lot of suffering. And he was actually talking about cars, you know, he was talking about the amazing thing that the car is. And when we go back to how it was created and how we all fell in love with it, and it really changed our lives. And so we've been brought up with that. And now suddenly we're saying, actually, you can't have that anymore. And so, and I really related that. And I thought that's so poignant. That's such a good way of looking at it. It's the same with the flying. I say it with my brother. He wants his son to go off and have the experiences that he had. And he can't equate it with how he's waking up to what's going on. But I just thought, yeah, that's right. And you know, financial services, they're all men, they're all driving big cars. And to make this change and have this understanding, the changes they've got to make are so radical. I think I just see it as being too great. So again, it's a comment, but I just don't know whether anybody, you know, particularly Franny, whether how you could, whether he had ideas about how he could introduce.
I think it's interesting what you say about cars, because in a way we've all been duped by cars. Because if you look at particularly cities, less rural, but cities, you know, the entire city is now taken over by cars. Children have lost their freedom. Children are dying of air pollution all the time. People die in car crashes all the time. People are isolated. You know, we don't know our neighbors because, you know, the entire city is taken over. You know, it's such a negative thing, the entire car culture of a city, that it's funny that people haven't got the imagination, and I agree with you. Not everybody can see it. That actually, if we could just remove all that and go back to like they are in Paris, trying to do the 15-minute city, which is fantastic, where I don't know if you know the idea, but basically anybody can get anything they need within 15 minutes by bike or by active transport. So and every service you need is within 15 minutes, which is brilliant. So to me, it's not a loss. It's a great, if only we could jump out of the car culture into active cities, you know, that would be a wonderful change for almost everybody. Yes, there may be a few blokes who who feel sad they can't drive, but then when they see their kids out playing in the street, and when their partner doesn't die of heart disease, because everybody be fitter. It's just, so to me it's not a loss, it's the absolute opposite. It's the building of a much more, it's the longing for the much happier future where humans are connected to each other, and and children are playing with each other and everything. I mean, you only have to go to a place like Amsterdam where you see, I think it was in the 70s that they decided to change from what we have in Britain now, mainly, car dominated culture, to bikes. And, that was a change that humans decided to make, and everybody's happier and healthier and fitter and friendlier and less, everything's better for making that change. So why we can't do it too, I don't know. I still believe.
Thank you, Joanna. Kate, did you have your hand up?
I'll leave it.
Okay, all right. Well, we're almost at the end, very sadly. Thank you so much, Franny. This has been marvellous. And I just wanted to remind all of you that we have lots of other events coming up soon, other conversations, as well as our regular webinars. We've got conversations with Sean Chamberlain, who's very big in Transition Towns Network. Also with somebody called Ruth Allen, who heads up the Climate Emergency Centres Hub in the UK, which is a fabulous network supporting communities to have physical spaces that will be available and ready to kind of look after the vulnerable if there is some kind of crisis. We have a conversation coming up with Phoebe Tickle, those of you who know her, fantastic, and also Rupert Reed. So lots to look forward to. But thank you all so very much for coming, and especially to you, Franny. We will post this on the Heart Community Group Facebook page and also the YouTube page. And yeah, deeply grateful. If everybody just unmutes themselves and
Well,
says
I
thank you and
just want to
goodbye.
say it's really lovely
Yeah.
to see you all, and it's very encouraging to know that there's people out there, basically, because you know, I do feel like I'm in a little void here, and you know, I'm just in the middle of darkest Devon on my own, battling away at all these things. So it's always fantastic to link up with other people and to know that there's people out there working as hard as you all are. So
Fantastic.
Much strength to you all.
Thank you. And Franny, have you taken off those email addresses, or do you want me to send them to you?
Oh, if you could collect them and send them to me in one email, that would be superb. Thank you.
Will do. All right.
Great to see you all.
Thank you, Franny.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Franny, can I just ask? Oh, she gone.
Oh.
Oh, she gone.